This story took place during my first run-through of Curse of Strahd and showed that every magical item has its use and that you can never be certain what you will run into in Ravenloft. My players were in the midst of exploring Castle Ravenloft when a sudden teleportation mishap transported them across to the far side of Barovia and down into the frozen depths of the Amber Temple. With the help of a friendly NPC wizard of some fame, the players managed to hide in a pocket dimension for the night to avoid freezing to death, and the next morning the group's sorcerer had the available spell slots to fabricate a huge bolt of cloth, which was quickly manufactured into makeshift winter clothing. Thus garbed in the finest ponchos magic could make, the group started to make their way down the mountain. It was a long and difficult trek, so much so that the resident NPC wizard they had tagging along decided to teleport away and meet up with them later, back at the castle. After all, he had agreed to help them kill Strahd and had not signed up for gallivanting across the Barovian mountains. At this point in the campaign, the group was feeling fairly overconfident. There wasn't much left in Barovia that could challenge them, other than Strahd himself, of course, and they had a ton of magical weapons and trinkets that were especially powerful against the undead. Well, that is, except the group's rogue. None of the powerful artifacts or weapons the group had recovered had been much use to the rogue, so he had been giving some of the less exciting and seemingly useless items as conciliatory prizes so he wouldn't feel completely left out when the magical items were being divided amongst the party. As the group crossed the bridge at Salenka Pass, they spotted with a quick glance what at first looked like a large hawk or eagle approaching down the mountainside. As the group looked back for a second take, they realized that this bird was growing in size at an alarming rate. It was in fact the Roc of Mount Gakis, who on its way down to Luna Lake for a quick fishy snack had spotted some bipedal treats shuffling across the bridge. As the Roc let out a shriek, the players started to panic. They were halfway across to the other side, and as things were now, it was unlikely they would make it in time. Lorcrath, the Dragonborn sorcerer, grabbed Ainu the Cleric and the two disappeared in a flash of purple light, safely transported by a dimension door to a gatehouse at the far side of the bridge. The other two members of the party had no choice but to try to leg it. The half-orc fighter Braagh ran forward, putting his trust in his armor and his steel, while Malfeus, the Tiefling rogue, opted for the safer route, falling back to the gatehouse the group had passed by already, which was slightly closer. Braagh almost made it all the way before the Roc descended and made a swoop at him. Its claws and beaks raked at the fighter. It was a glancing hit, but enough damage to persuade the group that fighting was not really an option, and moments later he threw himself into the cover of the waiting gatehouse. The Roc shrieked angrily and tried to reach in with his talon, but the group was too far in. The ancient gatehouse shook, and large furrows were scratched into the stone by the claw as it grabbed towards them. Then the Roc let out another frustrated screech, and as quickly as it had appeared, it seemed to vanish. On the opposite side of the bridge, Malfeus was preparing to make his move to catch up with his friends. Being a winged tiefling, he reasoned that his best chance would be to fly out and under the bridge and try to hide and sneak his way over. Now the Roc was just about to give up at this point, and was about to leave, but that wasn't something the players knew. And unfortunately for the rogue, Rocs have advantage on perception checks that rely on sight. So just as it was flying off, it caught a brief flicker of movement at the periphery of its vision. Instinct took over, and it dove. Just as Malfeus was rounding the edge of the bridge, the huge bird caught up with him. It was 4 times as quick as him, so he never had much of a chance of outrunning the beast. The Roc sunk both of his talons into his flesh and then started to tear into him with his beak. At this point, I was starting to think about how to introduce a new character into the campaign so late in the arc. Lorcrath had recently managed to acquire some dark means of resurrection that could perhaps be used to bring back Malfeus, but there wasn't really going to be enough leftovers after the Roc had its feast to resurrect him. Malfeus' player was looking over her sheet in desperation, moments away from death, searching for something, anything, that could help. Browsing over her inventory, she stopped at a forgotten item about halfway down and said, "I play my pipes." Now everybody had forgotten at this point that one of those seemingly useless magical treasures that had been given to the rogue was a set of magical pipes that caused fear. The reason they had been discarded was that the group had assumed that most monsters in Ravenloft were immune to fear, so they'd just been gathering dust in the rogue's satchel. And so the rogue played the pipes. And Rocs, despite being legendary creatures in my opinion, do not count as such in D&D, so don't possess legendary resistance, giving the rogue a fair 50-50 chance of succeeding. Now the dice were on Malfeus' side that night, as the rock screeched in fear, letting go of the rogue and pulling out of its dive. Malfeus, however, continued plummeting, striking into the forest below, crashing through the trees and leaving a small crater behind as he struck the forest floor. Still, he was alive, barely, and managed to limp in under cover and hide. The rock above broke out of the spell nearly instantly and circled the area for a few moments, screeching in frustration, but failing to spot its prey, and so it left, deciding that fish were a far easier snack after all. Now the group above had seen their friend dive over the edge, and moments later they saw the rock come flying back up. They had no idea what happened to Malfeus, but feared the worst, and so had no choice but to continue without him for now. Malfeus, meanwhile, had no wish to take to the skies of Barovia for a while, so had to trek by himself back towards the town of Vallaki. The group would manage to reunite just a few hours later to continue their hunt for Strahd, just a smidge humbler for the experience. The whole thing shows that you should never let yourself feel safe in Ravenloft. You never know what kind of creature could be waiting around the corner, and every magical item can have its use and be a potential lifesaver in the right situation. As for the Rock of Mankakis, well, the players never saw it again, and for the most part they considered themselves lucky and were unsure they would have stood a chance against it if they tried to actually fight the beast. It wouldn't be until the next time I ran Curse of Strahd that I would find out that all it really takes to kill a rock is a single spell, and just how desperately the poor things need legendary resistance. But that is a story for a different time. If you enjoyed this little tale from one of my old campaigns, then why not leave a like? And if you want to see more, don't forget to subscribe and press the bell icon to receive notifications of new videos. And if you want to support my channel, then please share this video with your friends or on social media. It really helps out a lot, and you can also follow me on Tumblr or Twitter, or check out my DM's guild page. Links to all of that in the description below. Until next time, Dungeon Delvers.